Alrighty, so today we're going to also do the season preview of Charlotte FC. So, like what I said earlier about Austin FC, Charlotte has not really done much during this offseason, and that is definitely not good for them considering, just like Austin, they have a lot of holes that they need to fix, and that the fact that they haven't really been very active in terms of transfer window, in terms of fixing those problems, it is definitely frustrating a lot of Charlotte FC fans, and now putting even more pressure on a front office and a technical director in Zoran Kanita that is very unpopular right now in the Charlotte FC fan base. But that being said, in terms of last season, they finished with a 10, 13, and 11 record and finished with 43 points. They actually did make it to the playoffs last year for the first time in their club history, but unfortunately, we know what happened in the playoffs. I mean, they got absolutely wiped off the map by the New York Red Bulls of all team, and that cost Christian Latanzio job. And overall, when you look at this roster that they constructed, I mean, it feels like it's a weird kind of roster, and also just a roster that doesn't feel like it's good enough to even compete with some of those teams that is competing for those playoff contention. But like I said, their last playoff appearance was in 2023, but they never won the playoff round as they lost that only playoff appearance, and obviously with them never winning a playoff round, it's obvious that they never won MLS Cup, and that this is only their third season coming into MLS. Now, looking at some of the transfer, and again, I've said how dire it was for Austin FC in terms of not making uh, a lot of moves. Well, Charlotte basically said, "Hold my beer." I mean, they did even one better by basically doing nothing this offseason besides getting David Bingham and also getting Tiger Smalls from the MLS Super Draft. And yeah, like I said, that's pretty much it. And also, when you look at some of the players that they lost, there are some key guys that they lost this offseason. Derek Jones is definitely one of them. I think he's going to fit really well that now he's with Columbus. But they also lost Jan Sabasinski, Kamil Josviak, which that has to be a huge relief for Charlotte fans, because we talk about some of the worst contract in the league and some of the worst DP player in the league. Kamil Josviak definitely is going to be up there. Though I will say that because last season he performed at least a little bit better than compared to his first season. I mean, after his first season, it was going to go down to almost Jairo Torres kind of level of bad in terms of the DP signing. But still, you got to say that that is a huge bust with all caps in terms of Charlotte decided to make him a DP signing, and especially we kind of knew that that was going to be the case in general. So the good news is they did finally get rid of his contract. They also lost Mackenzie Gaines, but then this is where the most important player that they lost, and I spell his name wrong here. I've spelled Carlo. It's actually Karol Swiderski. That is the player that they lost. They lost him just yesterday. Though they only lost him as he is currently on loan right now. But yeah, that is a huge loss for this Charlotte FC team. I mean, Karol Swiderski was by far the best attacking player on this team, and that this is where there's that question mark of, well, you didn't really do anything in terms of trying to solve the number 10 spot. Now you don't have a legitimate number 10 in this team, so now what? So, uh, besides that, they also lost Chris Heegert and Adrian Zendejas. Now, in terms of their preseason schedule, they actually have done pretty well in the preseason, consider how their roster is right now. I mean, they got a free draw against Sporting KC, a 2-2 draw against LAFC. And by the way, they were leading in that game against LAFC. They were 2-0 up, only to blow it in that game, which that sounds like very Charlotte FC from last season. I mean, this was a team that at point I label this team like the Columbus Crew of 2022, because this team just always tends to blow leads and give up points late in the game. So I think that preseason game against LAFC kind of almost is almost of a reminiscent of what we saw last season too. But after that, they're going to be part of the Coachella Valley Invitational, starting with them playing against the Galaxy on the 7th. Then they play against the San Jose Earthquakes, and then they play against Minnesota United on the 17th. So Charlotte gets to play two of my favorite teams to finish off in the preseason. Now, looking at the first 10 game for Charlotte FC, they start their opening game at home against NYCFC. Then they go on the road to play against the two Canadian teams. First, they play against Vancouver on the road. Then they play against Toronto FC. Then they go on the road again to play against Nashville SC. So 3 out of the first 4 games is going to be on the road. That's going to really test this Charlotte team, consider they're not really a good road team. But then, even with the 3 game road trip comes to an end, it gets even a tougher matchup. They get to play the Ohio team now, with Columbus and Cincinnati as their next 2 home game, and then they go on the road again to play against New England. So yeah, that stretch is going to be really tough for the Charlotte team before they return home to play against Toronto and Minnesota, and then they go on the road to play against NYCFC. So they're actually going to finish their series with NYCFC and Toronto very early, because both of those teams that they're going to be playing those 2 game series is within the first 10 games. Now, when you look at post Leeds Cup, after their Leeds Cup campaign is over, they return the regular season by playing against the New York Red Bulls at home. Then they get Atlanta United at home on August 31st before going on the road to face against Montreal and Orlando City. Then they get to play at home against New England. Then they go on the road to play against Inter Miami before finishing the season in the last 3 games at home against Chicago, at home against Montreal, and on decision day they go on the road to play against DC United. And I would say that last couple of games, you can say that they have a relatively easy schedule to finish. But most importantly, if this team is still competing for playoffs, those are going to be playoff 6 pointers that we're going to see in the latter part, because all those teams that I mentioned, at least in the last 4 game, that is, those are teams that could potentially be a direct rival of Charlotte FC in terms of them trying to compete for those last couple of spots in the Eastern Conference. And you notice I say that because there's no way I think this team is going to be along the numerous teams that is going to be fighting for those playoff position. I mean, I already said the East is just completely loaded right now, and I also say that the East, it feels like there's 2 tier where you have the haves and have-nots. The haves, of course, are those really good teams I mentioned, like Orlando, Atlanta, Philly, New England, and Columbus and Cincinnati. Those are going to be a team that's going to be really battling for those playoff spots. But then you also have the have-nots in terms of some of the bad teams in the Eastern Conference, like Chicago, like Toronto, like DC, and in some cases you could say Charlotte kind of belongs that list. So with the way that those last couple of spots left in the playoffs, they're going to be definitely battling for those spots. And I also feel like this could be maybe very similar to what we see last season, where we kind of saw the haves and have-nots in the Eastern Conference. We definitely saw some of the best team in the East battling out, and also some of the worst team in the Eastern Conference just battling for those last couple of playoff spots. Now, in terms of the strength of this team, I'm not gonna lie, I really can't think of this team in terms of what really is the strength of this team. I mean, I guess midfield could be a strength for this team. I mean, they do have a decent midfield with Ashley Westwood and Brent Bronico. Those two are really good MLS caliber midfielders. But besides that, I mean, when you look at this team, I guess maybe goalkeeping could be their strength. I mean, Kalina, I think he's a good goalkeeper. He's a good shot stopping goalkeeper, though there's times where he also has shown his ugly size in conceding soft goal. Speaking of soft goal and talking about the weakness of this team, yeah, it's pretty much everywhere. I mean, if you don't look at the midfield, this team has holes and have question everywhere on the pitch. I mean, again, starting with the goalkeeping spot, Kalina being kind of inconsistent. At the back, I mean, this has always been a Charlotte team that always has a lot of question in the defensive front, and the season is no exception. I think they're probably going to go with Melenda and Tualuma as the 2 center back partnership, but both of them didn't look good at all last season. And then you look on the attacking phase of this team. I mean, Capetti, he is probably going to be the number 9 on this team, and I think that with the way that they did move on from Karol Swiderski, at least on a loan from, I think that will give Capetti more of an opportunity, because I feel like when Charlotte decided to put both Swiderski and Capetti last season, it just didn't really quite work out, because both of them kind of play very similar style of way, and that when you play 2 players that kind of play a very similar style of play and has that similar ways of trying to go forward to score the goals, it's not really going to work out very well. So I think now that with Swiderski is moving on, that maybe will unlock Capetti chances of being the goal scorer that Charlotte is hoping to do so. But even then, is going to be the guy that's going to be giving him the service to score those goals, because this is where we go back to the number 10 position. They have to find a replacement for Swiderski. For a while, they were linked with a guy from Bodo and from the Norwegian league, but it feels like now that transfer is being rejected a couple of times, and now Charlotte are just kind of in a tough spot right now with the way that they just don't have a legitimate playmaker on this team. And I haven't even got to the winger position too. There's a lot of question in terms of the winger position too. I mean, Kervin Vargas was okay last season, but not great. And then on the other side, which is where Jusviak always occupied, now you don't have Jusviak. I guess maybe that spot is belong to Ben Bender. And don't get me wrong, I like Ben Bender, but I don't think he's a starting caliber kind of winger. So yeah, basically there is a lot of problems with the starting 11. I haven't even got to the depth of this team too. The depth is not very good on this team too, and that they need to figure this out, because I mean, for Dean Smith, he's gonna have to work miracle with this team if he this is gonna be the roster that they will have for opening day. And I'm assuming they're gonna make some more move. I mean, they have to, because with this current roster that they have, I will not be surprised they might finish as one of the worst team in the Eastern Conference, because of just so much question on this team right now. But that being said, in terms of expectation, obviously I think it's probably stayed within playoff contention. Maybe. Obviously, I've already said that I don't think they're anywhere close to being in the tiers of the halves in the Eastern Conference and some of those top team in the East. So now you're basically in the tier, basically facing against all these other teams that are looking to fight for these last couple of playoff spot. And again, with the roster that they currently have, I don't think they're gonna be staying within that playoff contention. But if they do finally get some reinforcement, and it doesn't even have to be in the beginning of the season, it could be within the season. And this is also why whenever I do season preview early, it's kind of tough to basically preview some of these teams, because it only takes one big move for Charlotte made. If Charlotte decided to spend one of their DP spot, or even both of their DP spot, because they've now opened 2 DP spot with both of those Polish DP no longer on this team. They can definitely get themselves back into the conversation of being back in playoff contention in the East. But as of now, they're nowhere near of being that team to be an Eastern Conference contention, and they have to make some signings to try and address some really big question mark when it comes to this team, of just everywhere on their roster being a huge question mark, and being kind of just not good enough to be competing against some of the best team, or even some of the most mediocre team right now in the Eastern Conference. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of looking at Charlotte FC. And again, as I said about Austin FC, I do apologize to Charlotte FC fans. I'm painting a grim kind of scenario for them, but it's kind of how it is. The way I look at it, I just don't think this roster is going to do well. I think this could be one of the worst team in the Eastern Conference this season. But let me know in the comments below, do you agree with that? And also, what do you think is the strength, the weakness, and the expectation heading into this season? But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.